Hi, good morning, everyone. Today, we are going to go ahead and begin with a very new topic, which is going to be capital market and how, it plays an important role in the country. Right? So, we're going to talk about the capital market in detail today. So, go ahead, write down the topic for the day. So, the topic would be capital market and its role, right? Capital market and its role. Not only that, we're not only going to talk about capital market and its role, but what regulations have taken place in the capital market. We're going to talk about that also. We're also going to go ahead and talk about how the capital market is structured. So, जो भी, whatever is related to the capital market, हम उस पूरे को, we're going to go ahead and talk about that in detail. Okay, fine. So please go ahead and understand that when we talk about the capital market, beta, it is part of the financial institution, Indian financial system, right? And when we talk about the Indian financial system, broadly speaking, we can go ahead and we can show it something like this. So I can say that this is my Indian financial system. बेटा कैसे दिखता है Indian financial system? You have various financial institutes, right? What are those financial institutes? Commercial bank, right? Insurance companies, right? Mutual funds, right? Then you have provident funds, then you have non-banking financial companies. These are the various financial institutions in India. These are the various financial institutes in India, right? Now, the financial institutions, they are basically going ahead and they are giving funds and they are receiving funds, right? So there will be someone who will be the supplier of funds, and there will be someone who will be demander of funds. Right? When we talk about the supplier of funds, then who can be the supplier of the funds? The supplier of funds can be anyone who is depositing the money with them, right? And who is depositing the money with them? Why? It can be individuals. It can be businesses. It can be the government. So these three can be the supplier of the funds, people who deposit their money with these financial institutions. Right? Then we have depositor, demanders of the fund. Again, individuals can take loan. Businesses can take loan. And government can take loan. This will be the demanders of the fund. Right, beta? Now try to understand that the supplier of funds will give their funds to one of these financial institutions, and these financial institutions will give funds to one of these demanders of the funds, right? Now, another thing which can happen, ये तो एक 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 वो हो गया, one direction. The other direction, how it goes ahead and how it works, is that these suppliers of the funds, जो ये suppliers हैं funds के, they can go ahead and they can also buy some shares, right? For example, I go to a company, I buy their shares. So when they will be going ahead and they will be buying the shares, then also they are supplying fund to the institutions, right? So for example, if I go and if I try and I buy the share of a company, right, through the stock market, right, then also I am providing fund against the share, and those funds can again be given out as loans, right? Then sometimes what can happen is that, although very rare, but what can happen is that these suppliers and demanders, they can meet with each other in a private placement. माने इनको किसी बैंक की, किसी फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूट की जरूरत नहीं है, और किसी एक उसमें प्राइवेट प्लेसमेंट में ये लोग एक दूसरे से मिल रहे हैं. So we can also have private placement. Right. So through private placement, the funds can go from supplier to demander, right? And so the demander can return the funds later on. That can also happen, right? Now, another thing that we start now, that is called as the financial market. The financial market. And this financial market, beta, it has two aspects. One is called as the money market, and one is called as the capital market. ठीक है. मनी मार्केट एंड कैपिटल मार्केट का जब हम पढ़ेंगे, देन मनी मार्केट इज रिलेटेड टू फंड्स. सो फंड्स गो फ्रॉम सप्लायर्स टू डिमांडर्स, and capital market is related to securities. So securities go from suppliers to demanders. This is a systematic approach of your of this entire system. Okay. Today, what we are focused on, what we want to go ahead and what we want to talk about, that is basically in detail. We want to go ahead and we want to talk about the capital market in detail, right? So remember that, so try to understand that when we talk about this entire process, right, we have more or less done everything, right? We have already gone ahead and we have talked about commercial banks. इसके बारे में हमने बात कर लिया. हाँ, कैसे होते हैं, क्या होते हैं. Then we have already gone ahead and we have already talked about the money market. Open market operations कैसे होते हैं, क्या होता है, कैसे होता है. We have already gone ahead and provided the money market, right? Now, what we want to go ahead and what we want to do today is that we want to talk in detail about the capital market. Right? Okay, so write down capital market. Right. Now, this is that financial market which deals with the long-term funds, right? Which usually exceeds 1 year, right? And through which instruments? Through share, debentures, derivatives, bonds. जब भी हम इन इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स में डील करते हैं, तो जो हम जिस चीज में हम डील करते हैं उसको हम कैपिटल मार्केट बोलते हैं, राइट? कॉन्ट्रास्ट दिस विद द मनी मार्केट. Money market is usually that market in which it's a segment of the financial market in which we are borrowing and lending, right? But for a short period of time, typically up to 1 year, right? So money market is a market which has, smaller periods, right? Which is a short-term borrowing and lending, right? But capital market is a market which is a long-term period. So first of all, let's try to write the definition for both of them. So better write down money market. It is a segment of financial market where short-term borrowing and lending of funds take place. Typically for period up to 1 year. So better mark, highlight some points here, short term and up to 1 year. जब हम सिर्फ 1 साल तक के फंड्स की बात करते हैं, दैट इज योर मनी मार्केट, राइट? सो मनी मार्केट, it basically is a highly liquid asset market. क्योंकि ये फंड्स 1 साल तक के लिए होते हैं, तो इनके जो भी एसेट्स होते हैं वो हाईली लिक्विड होते हैं, राइट? सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल, ट्रेजरी बिल्स, certificate of deposit, right? And then you have all of these like term money, right? Like notice money, etc. अच्छा, इसमें भी you can just understand, huh? There are three kind of money beta that you can understand. First is called as call money. Within the money market, huh? Call money money, it is overnight loans, right? These are basically interbank transactions. जब एक बैंक दूसरे बैंक को एक दिन के लिए, एक रात के लिए लोन देता है, तो उसको कॉल मनी कहते हैं. The second one is called as notice money. What is notice? Loan for 2 to 14 days बेटा, इसको हम नोटिस मनी बोलते हैं. The third one is called as term money. What is term money बेटा? When the loan is for 15 days up to 1 year. So money market में, since we said that you can give loan up to 1 year, right? All these three terms are important. Call money, notice money and term money. ठीक है? फिर treasury bills होते हैं. So treasury bills, when we talk about T-bills, huh? These are the bills which are issued by the government. Short-term government securities होती हैं. And these treasury bills also have some time periods. It's called 91-day treasury bill, 182-day treasury bill, 364-day treasury bill. So there are different days treasury bills that the government issues, right? Then बेटा commercial paper भी एक चीज होती है यहाँ पे. Commercial paper is basically unsecured promissory note issued by the corporates. Unsecured promissory note issued by कॉर्पोरेट, ठीक है। उसके बाद हमारा सर्टिफिकेट ऑफ डिपॉजिट आ गया, विच इज द टाइम डिपॉजिट। दिस इज द टाइम डिपॉजिट इशूड बाय द बैंक टू द इन्वेस्टर्स, ठीक है। फिर हमारे पास आ जाता है रिवर्स एंड रेपो एंड रिवर्स रेपो रेट। Now, these are the securities which are issued by RBI. Okay, so these are some of the examples of the money market, right? Okay. Anyways, coming back. So today, what we want to do is not the money market. Money market हम बाद में पढ़ेंगे. We have already done most of the things in money market. हमने पढ़ लिया है कि what is liquidity adjustment facility, what is MSS, what is the other thing, standing deposit facility. ये सब हम already पढ़ चुके हैं. We have studied them. What we want to go ahead and what we want to focus on today, right? That is basically the capital market. So what is capital market then? Capital market is basically that market where you are having the funds for a longer period of time, right? So when you go ahead and when you kind of have the loans given out or the deposits which exceed 1 year, right? Then we go ahead and we call that as a capital market. So please write down beta. Capital market is a financial market where loans are given out for more than 1 year, right? So please write down. It facilitates the mobilization of long-term funds, typically for a period exceeding 1 year through instruments like share, debentures, and bonds, right? Like share debentures and bonds. Okay. Now, when we talk about the components of the capital market, beta, then there are two types of components. One is called as primary market. And one is called as secondary market. But a primary market means it's called as a new issue market. And secondary market means it's called as the stock market. So primary market is that market where we issue the funds for the first time ever, right? So for example, if consider a case, if I want to go ahead and if I want to say that there is a firm which has just been established and it wants to raise money for the first time through the capital market by issuing the stocks, right? So when they are issuing it for the first time, जब पहली बार उन्होंने shares को market में launch किया, right? Like you would have heard just now, Zomato launched its share, Swiggy launched its share. So when they are launching their shares for the first time ever, right? That is basically called as your primary market, right? And when they go ahead and when they launch for, resale purpose, like for example, what we do in daily basis. Now, I have this app which is called as Kite, okay, but different people use different apps. And what we do in this app, basically, in this app, we are going ahead and we are buying and selling the shares, right? Now that is taking place in the secondary market. Those shares have always existed, right? So for example, the shares of Reliance, they're not issued today. They were there in the market since many years. But what I can go ahead and do is I can go to the market, look at the price today, buy the shares of the Reliance, and whenever I find like I can go ahead and I can sell those shares, right? So when you go ahead and buy and sell these shares in the market, right? Not that they're issued by the company for the first time, right? The transaction is just taking place in a secondary market, and that is called as old issue market. Old issue भी बोलते हैं, stock market भी बोलते हैं, secondary market भी बोलते हैं, right? So please write down about the primary market, beta. The write down, beta. It is the type of capital market where new securities are issued for the first time. Thus, it is also called new issue market. The primary market provides the channel for the sale of new securities. The issuer of the securities sells the securities to raise funds for the purpose of investment and or to discharge. तो जब भी फर्म्स के पास पैसा कम पड़ता है उनको इन्वेस्टमेंट करने या उनको पैसे की जरूरत है फॉर सम रीजन, they can go ahead and they can issue their funds in the primary market for the first time, right? So this is what your primary market is. Okay. Now, how can they issue it? What's the method of issuing it? It can be public issue, it can be private placement, it can be right issue, right? So there are three methods to it, right? And who goes ahead and who regulates these kind of markets, right? So they are basically regulated by SEBI. Okay. So please write down the funds can be, the securities can be, sorry, issued through the first one is, and this is the most common one, which is the public issue. Right, beta? Public issue is also, your IPO. You would have heard the word IPO. कितना famous होता है ना कि एकदम से Zomato का IPO निकला हुआ है, Swiggy का IPO निकला हुआ है, खरीद लो. So, this is basically IPO. IPO means what? Initial public offering. Right? So this is where they basically go to the public directly, right? And they just go ahead and they just issue the shares to the public. One very famous IPO from the public firm side was that of LIC in 2022. It was a very famous IPO that took place, right? And, everyone wanted shares of LIC. So I was also one of the people who was very crazy that I somehow want to get the share of LIC. And let me tell you that, thankfully I got a share allotted in us, you get them in the, you get them in some numbers. So you have to buy minimum 10 shares, and then you have to buy in the multiple, right? 10, 20, 30, and so on and so forth. So thankfully, I was also allotted one of them. And just yesterday, I was looking at the share, and it has got an appreciation of 35% now, right? So usually when you buy shares in an IPO, you get at a discounted price. So the moment it is launched in the market later on, the prices just shoot, right? And you make a lot of profit out of it. So that's the public issue. The second one, beta, जो दूसरा आता है, that is basically called as private placement. सो प्राइवेट प्लेसमेंट कंपेरेटिवली सस्ता चीज है, क्योंकि आपको पूरी पब्लिक तक नहीं जाना है, आप प्राइवेटली कुछ लोगों को, कुछ इन्वेस्टर्स को अपने शेयर्स बेचते हो, अपने शेयर सेल ऑफ करते हो. सो दिस इज वेयर यू ऑफर योर सिक्योरिटीज टू अ सेलेक्ट group of investors, right? To a select group of investors like banks, mutual funds, right? High net worth individuals, etc. And this is a comparatively cheaper process. Why? Because you're not going all public, right? All in public, right? And this is done through something which is called as qualified institutional placement, right? Where you just go ahead and you give to some institutes, right? तो यहाँ पर आपका प्रेफर्ड अलॉटमेंट भी हो सकता है, आपने कुछ प्रेफरेंशियल लोगों को दिया. इट कैन बी इंस्टीट्यूशनल प्लेसमेंट ऑल्सो, इट कैन बी क्वालिफाइड इंस्टीट्यूशनल प्लेसमेंट ऑल्सो. नॉट इम्पॉर्टेंट फॉर यू. आपको सिर्फ इतना समझना है कि प्राइवेट प्लेसमेंट क्या होता है. प्राइवेट प्लेसमेंट इज वेयर यू आर गिविंग योर शेयर्स for the first time, but only to a few investors. We're only allotting them to few of them, right? Okay. The third one, beta, that is called as right issue. Okay. So right issue is that, and again, this has recently happened. I think it happened with Reliance. Okay. Right issue is when you go ahead and you offer your existing shareholders the right to buy additional shares at a discounted price. ठीक है. तो हम क्या बोल रहे हैं कि देखो, हमारी कंपनी को और पैसा रेस करना है, हम नए शेयर मार्केट में लॉन्च करना चाहते हैं, बट इंस्टेड ऑफ गिविंग everyone the opportunity to buy the share, हम ये नहीं करेंगे. Rather, we are going to only give it to few existing shareholders. ठीक है, जो हमारे existing shareholders हैं, हम उनको पहले पूछेंगे rather than going ahead in the market as a whole. So rather than making new shareholders, we offer the existing shareholders at a discounted price कि आप आके और शेयर खरीद सकते हो, right? So this is where the existing shareholders are offered additional shares at a discounted price. At a discounted price, and this is in proportion to their current holding. ठीक है. जैसे अगर हमने बोला कि आपको हम राइट दे रहे हैं 1:10 का, 1:10 मीन्स व्हाट बेटा, कि अगर आपके पास 100 शेयर है तो आपको 10 शेयर्स डिस्काउंटेड प्राइस पे मिल जाएंगे. आर यू अंडरस्टैंडिंग इट? द रेशियो इज 1:10. मतलब फॉर एवरी 10 शेयर्स अ पर्सन हैज, you will be offered one new share at a discounted price. Okay. So this is about your right issue. Okay. Now just coming back to what we were doing. So ये हमारा प्राइमरी मार्केट है. प्राइमरी मार्केट वो मार्केट है जहां पर आप अपने शेयर्स को फर्स्ट टाइम इकोनॉमी में, मार्केट में इंट्रोड्यूस करते हो, उसको हम प्राइमरी मार्केट बोलते हैं. The second market that we have, that is basically called as the secondary market. Okay, beta. Secondary market, as we have already stated, is called as the old issue market. माने वहां यहाँ पे वो शेयर्स हैं जो पहले ही मार्केट में हैं, बट अब लोग उनको बस सेल एंड ट्रेड कर रहे हैं. सो प्लीज राइट डाउन, इट रेफर्स टू द मार्केट where those type of securities are traded which have already been issued and offered to public and or listed on the stock exchange. Right? Therefore, it is also called old issue market. Right? The secondary market enables securities holders to adjust their holdings in response to changes in their assessment of risk and return, and to buy or sell their securities as per their liquidity needs. तो बेसिकली सेकेंडरी मार्केट क्या बोल रहा है बेटा कि ठीक है, आपको पैसे की जरूरत है, अपने शेयर बेच दो. ठीक है, आपको लग रहा है ये कंपनी ज्यादा रिस्की हो रही है, अपने शेयर बेच दो. आपको लग रहा है ये कंपनी का शेयर गिरा हुआ है, फ्यूचर में प्रॉफिट होगा, शेयर खरीद लो. सो यू कैन बाय एंड सेल शेयर्स by evaluating the risk and return. Okay, that is what secondary market is helping you to do, right? Okay, so if someone tells me now to distinguish between primary and secondary market, so you understand that this is where new securities are sold, right? Here only existing ones are sold, right? Here you can only buy securities. Here you can both buy and sell, right? Here the price of the share is decided by management of the company, right? Here the price is market determined by the demand and supply, right? Here there is no fixed geographical location, right? But secondary market are listed, are located at a specified place, which is called as the stock exchange. right? Then when we talk about the major intermediaries, when you first time, if you're a commerce student, you would know this, that when you first time introduce the shares in the market, what do you need? You need someone who's called as an underwriter, right? You need debenture trustees, right? You need merchant banks, right? So these are your major intermediaries. On the right hand side, though, you will have your brokers, right? Or jobbers, etc. So the intermediaries also differ. Okay, fine. Now, beta, let us go ahead and let us talk about, uh, you know, within the, so we have understood what these financial market, the two type of capital markets are. Now, within this, very, very important, there are some key institutions. And the key institute I want to focus on, beta, that is called your SEBI. Okay,